In the complexity of human relationships, the most potent form of control isn't always what it seems. There are no chains, no cages, and no visible power struggles. What binds us isn't even the illusion of love, but something far more dangerous: the seductive lure of desire itself. Nietzsche warned us of this invisible yet all-encompassing force over a century ago. His insight into human nature revealed something darker than simple control. It wasn't reason that ruled the masses, nor even brute force. It was something far more insidious: the manipulation of our cravings, our desires, and our very sense of freedom. This is the deepest and most dangerous form of seduction, the kind that makes us believe we are choosing our path, when in reality, we are being quietly guided by an unseen hand. This seduction isn't reserved for tyrants or geniuses. It happens in everyday life, within your relationships, your career, your habits, and the ways you spend your time. The seduction begins as a subtle whisper, a suggestion that feels like your own thought. Yet, as Nietzsche pointed out, this power doesn't need to overtly control you. It thrives in the shadows of your mind, making you believe that you are free, when, in fact, every movement you make is being carefully choreographed. We live in a world where people often don't want truth, they want comfort, illusion, and validation. And this is where the most dangerous seduction thrives. It doesn't rely on overt power or dominance, but on the subtle manipulation of our deepest desires. What feels like longing, like a desperate choice, is nothing more than the tightening of a leash that feels like freedom. The clever seducer knows exactly how to pull you in, making you think you're free while guiding you precisely where they want you. Seduction is not simply about flattery, charm, or external beauty. Most people believe that seduction relies on obvious signals: affection, attention, charm. But Nietzsche saw something deeper, something more sinister at play. The most dangerous seducers don't shower you with constant affection. They don't seek to win you over with unyielding attention. Instead, they create a subtle form of manipulation, one that doesn't feel like control at all. This is the tactic of withholding. The seducer withholds attention, affection, or validation just enough to make you crave more. The trick is, in the absence, the moments when they disappear, only to return and give you just a taste of the reward. This creates a longing so deep that your entire body becomes addicted to the cycle. It's a dance of absence and presence, and it creates a bond far stronger than any flattery could ever achieve. We often label this chemistry, or we mistake it for love or fate. But what we're really feeling is dependency. You don't recognize it in the moment, but deep down, this cycle is training your nervous system. It's creating an emotional dependence, and you're not even aware that you've entered the game. You'll keep texting that person who ignores you. You'll keep buying from that company you swore you'd leave. And you'll keep defending that belief system that no longer serves you. Why? Because the seducer knows how to press your buttons. Once they can make you believe that you're making a choice, that you're in control, they've won. The leash is invisible, but it is there, guiding you, shaping your actions and decisions, all while you believe you are free. Withholding is the most insidious form of control. It is the art of giving just enough to make someone feel seen, but never enough to satisfy. It's a psychological dance that thrives on the tension between desire and absence. The seducer doesn't flood you with attention or affection, but instead offers it sporadically enough to make you feel noticed, but not enough to fulfill your need for constant reassurance. This is the very essence of seduction, the creation of desire through uncertainty. When the object of your longing disappears, you begin to ache for their return. When they return, they give you a small taste of affection or approval, and you're left craving more. This cycle becomes your reality. And just when you think you can break free, you find yourself drawn back in. You feel as though your decisions are your own, that you are choosing freely. But in truth, one of the most potent illusions in human relationships is the belief that we are making choices when, in reality, we are being subtly guided. The seducer creates the illusion of freedom by allowing us to believe that we are in control. This tactic is subtle, and its power lies in its ability to make us feel like we are freely making decisions. We choose who to text, who to call, and what we believe in, but, in truth, those choices are often the product of external influence. Nietzsche understood that human beings crave meaning and agency. We want to believe we are in control of our destiny, that our decisions are ours and ours alone. The seducer exploits this innate desire for autonomy by offering us the illusion of choice. But when we look closer, we see that every choice we make is part of a carefully constructed game. one that we did not create but have been drawn into. It's the same in the workplace, in friendships, and in relationships. The subtle manipulation of choices creates a sense of dependency. You may think you are making a decision about your job, your partner, or your beliefs, but in reality, those choices are being guided by someone who knows exactly how to push your emotional buttons. This is the most dangerous kind of manipulation, the kind that feels like freedom. Intermittent reinforcement is a psychological principle that has been used for centuries, long before it had a name. Nietzsche, though not familiar with the term, understood the concept deeply. The seducer doesn't give constant affection or attention. Instead, they create a rhythm of scarcity and reward. This cycle builds a dependency that is almost impossible to break. Psychologists today call this intermittent reinforcement, the tactic of giving small, unpredictable doses of attention or affection. This type of reinforcement keeps the person coming back for more, always chasing the next reward, the next hit of affection, approval, or validation. Nietzsche saw this mechanism as the heartbeat of human desire and power. When someone controls the rhythm of reward and denial, they hold the keys to your will. The power of intermittent reinforcement is that it makes the subject constantly yearn for more. The seducer doesn't satisfy the craving, they feed it just enough to make the subject return. It's a cycle that grows stronger over time, and the person begins to crave not the person or the object of desire, but the cycle itself. This creates a deep, almost subconscious addiction to the seducer's approval or affection, one that feels like a natural part of life, even though it's anything but. Nietzsche's insight wasn't just about personal relationships. He understood that seduction is not limited to romance or love. It is a strategy of power used by governments, religions, and corporations throughout history. These institutions, much like individual seducers, use the same principles of desire, scarcity, and reward to control large groups of people. Religions, for example, promise salvation or paradise, but only if you adhere to their doctrine, follow their rules, and submit to their authority. The promise of eternal happiness is the reward, but it's never given freely. It's always conditional, and it's always linked to your obedience. Governments, too, offer safety and security, but only if you remain fearful of external threats, real or imagined. The seduction of fear and the promise of protection are tools used by rulers to maintain control over the masses. Corporations operate on the same principles. They sell you the idea of freedom and happiness, but only if you keep consuming their products, keep buying into their promises of fulfillment. The seduction of the marketplace thrives on the tension between desire and deprivation. Just as in personal relationships, these institutions offer enough to awaken desire, but withhold just enough to keep you coming back for more. Religions, with their grand promises of paradise and eternal life, use the same seduction techniques that Nietzsche observed in individual relationships. These institutions promise the highest rewards, salvation, eternal peace, and escape from suffering, but only if you obey their rules, adhere to their faith, and submit to their authority. The tactic of withholding here is stark. Paradise is promised, but it is always just out of reach, only attainable after a lifetime of devotion, sacrifice, and unwavering faith. Governments use a similar strategy. They offer protection, security, and peace of mind, but only if you remain fearful and compliant. Fear of enemies, real or fabricated, becomes the currency of control. The seduction lies in making the people feel as though they are free, but always tethered by the chains of obedience to the state. The state promises safety, but only as long as you stay within its system. The greatest power lies in convincing people that without the state's protection, they would be lost. The fear of an uncertain world beyond the safety of the government's protection is what keeps people loyal, much like the seducer who keeps their prey addicted to the cycle of longing and reward. The structure of seduction, then, extends beyond personal relationships. It's embedded in the institutions that shape society. They manipulate desire, withholding what is promised, and creating an unending longing for something unattainable without submission to their rules. The irony is profound. Just as the seducer creates dependence in relationships by pulling away and returning with a morsel of attention, so too do religions and governments create dependence by withholding freedom, offering only the illusion of choice, security, or salvation in return for obedience. Corporations operate under the same principles of seduction, manipulating consumers with the promise of happiness, status, and fulfillment if only they buy into the product. But the seduction is not just about selling products, it's about creating a cycle. Companies don't just sell you their goods, they sell you the idea that you need them. They create a world where consumption becomes a necessity, a part of the identity they wish to create for you. This cycle mirrors the tactics used in personal relationships. The promise of happiness, validation, and comfort, but only when you consume their goods. Just like the seducer who withholds affection, corporations withhold satisfaction, offering just enough to keep you coming back for more. With each new product, you feel a fleeting moment of fulfillment, only for it to fade away, and you find yourself returning to the cycle, craving the next purchase to fill the void. This continuous cycle of desire and reward creates a dependency, one that is harder to break than it may seem. It's not just about buying products, it's about creating a sense of identity through consumption. The seduction becomes ingrained in every part of your life. The clothes you wear, the cars you drive, the lifestyle you project. Your identity becomes so tied to these things that when they are withheld, you feel a deep void, much like the absence of affection from a manipulative partner. This is the power of corporate seduction. It doesn't just sell a product, it sells a lifestyle, an identity, and an unquenchable thirst for more. STOP. Part 9. The seduction of seduction. One of the most dangerous aspects of seduction is how it ties into our sense of self-worth. The seducer doesn't just manipulate your desires, they manipulate your sense of who you are, by making you feel needed, valued, or indispensable. They build a psychological bond that is based not on mutual affection, but on your dependence on their validation. In romantic relationships, this often plays out with one person making the other feel as though their value is directly tied to their presence, approval, or affection. The manipulator gives just enough affection or praise to create a sense of worth, but only on their terms. Over time, this makes the victim feel like they cannot live without this validation. The cycle of praise and withdrawal makes their worth feel conditional, and thus they begin to seek it constantly, giving more of themselves to meet that need. This dynamic is just as common in the workplace, where employees may feel their value is determined by their performance or their loyalty to the company. In these cases, self-worth becomes so intertwined with external approval that the person begins to sacrifice their true self for the validation they believe they need. What once felt like a choice to work harder, to give more, to sacrifice personal time for the job becomes an addiction to validation. This is the seduction of self-worth, a trap that leaves individuals feeling empty and dependent on others for their sense of identity and value. The deepest and most insidious aspect of seduction is how it masquerades as love or loyalty. The seducer makes you believe that the desire you feel is love, when in reality, it is an addiction to their control. This manipulation is particularly dangerous because it plays on the most basic human emotions: love, loyalty, and devotion. In a romantic relationship, the seducer will often withhold love or affection, making the victim feel as though they must earn it. They create a sense of loyalty by making the victim believe that only through submission will they experience true love. In doing so, they distort the concept of loyalty. What begins as a natural desire to please or stay committed turns into a compulsive need to maintain the relationship, regardless of its harm. The victim begins to confuse loyalty with dependence, making them stay in unhealthy situations because they equate suffering with love. In broader societal contexts, this concept of false loyalty is used by governments and corporations as well. They make people believe that loyalty to the state or the brand is a virtue. The truth, however, is that this loyalty often serves to keep people complacent and dependent on systems that exploit them. The very idea of loyalty becomes perverted, not as a bond built on trust and mutual respect, but as a tool for manipulation and control. It's a false loyalty that keeps people trapped, believing they are doing the right thing, when in reality, they are being controlled by forces beyond their awareness. At the core of the most dangerous seduction is the ability of the manipulator to reflect back the version of yourself that you most desire to see. The seducer becomes a mirror, one that reflects your deepest desires, your insecurities, your secret hopes. They don't need to force you into submission. They simply need to show you the version of yourself you most want to become. This is what makes seduction so powerful and insidious. It feels as though the seducer is giving you exactly what you need, when in fact, they are taking everything from you. By mirroring your ideal self, the seducer convinces you that they are the key to unlocking your true potential. They speak the words you've always longed to hear, play the role you've always dreamed of, and for a moment, you begin to believe that this reflection is who you truly are. The seducer doesn't need to force anything upon you. They simply provide a reflection, a vision of your best self. The problem is that this reflection is never real. It's a mask, a facade that covers the emptiness beneath. The more you feed into it, the more you become trapped in a version of yourself that was never truly yours to begin with. You stop asking if this reflection is real, and instead, you begin to feed on it, believing that only through them will you ever truly discover who you are. The seducer gains power by making you believe that the person you are supposed to be can only be unlocked by them. This is the ultimate form of manipulation, the ability to rewrite your identity by becoming the mirror through which you define yourself. The most dangerous form of seduction, according to Nietzsche, is the illusion of becoming. This is where seduction transcends desire and identity manipulation. It no longer simply makes you want the seducer, it convinces you that you are nothing without them. The seducer doesn't just alter what you crave or what you think you need, they reshape who you are at your core. When you begin to believe that your identity is incomplete without the seducer, when you stop seeing yourself as a whole and begin to see yourself as an extension of them, the true damage begins. The seducer has now rewritten your very sense of self, and you become a mere reflection of their will and desires. This is the ultimate manipulation, not just creating dependency on affection, but creating dependency on their version of you. As you become more entangled in this web, you begin to forget who you were before. The self you once knew begins to fade, replaced by a new identity, a shadow of what the seducer wants you to be. Nietzsche saw this as one of the darkest forms of seduction. It doesn't just control what you want or what you crave, it controls who you believe yourself to be. And once that identity is rewritten, the person becomes fully dependent, unable to see themselves as anything other than an extension of the manipulator's desires. Once the seducer has altered your identity, the next step is far more sinister: manipulating your memories. Memory, Nietzsche understood, is not fixed. It is malleable, easily bent, and vulnerable to suggestion. The seducer knows this well. By controlling the narrative of your past, they control the present, and by extension, the future. Think about the times you've been in a toxic relationship, where you only remember the rare moments of happiness and dismiss the constant pain. The seducer reshapes your memories, making you doubt your own version of events. They convince you that things weren't as bad as you remember, or that the good moments outweigh the bad. Slowly, they chip away at your ability to trust your own memory, until you begin to accept their version of the story as the truth. This manipulation extends beyond personal